Hello and welcome to another video, and today I want to talk about something I didn't think I'd be talking about in 2018, which is E3 2019, but here we are and we're talking about it. And why are we talking about E3 2019 already? Well, that's because Sony's not going to be there. You heard me correctly. Sony is not attending E3 2019. They've pulled out of the E3 press conference. They won't be having a press conference. They won't be there at any capacity whatsoever. This is very fascinating and interesting news because it is the first time in the 24 years that E3 has gone on that a company this big, who's been there since the beginning, is pulling out of this conference and just not going to be there. And it says a lot about not only Sony's state right now, but it also leaves me personally a little perplexed, also pondering what they're going to do and what their strategy is in 2019. And it's kind of what I've thought all along, which is they're basically on the train to talk about PS5. So this video is pretty much going to be my opinions about what Sony is doing with E3 next year and what their plan is for everything that's going on with them behind the scenes. So anyways, let's dive in. So Sony's pulling out of E3 2019, and they've not really made too much of a statement about it other than they're not going to be there. Microsoft and Nintendo were quick to come out and say, hey, we'll be at E3 2019. So it's going to be really interesting. One of my favorite things about E3 every year is watching the press conferences and seeing what everybody has. What tricks do they have up their sleeve? You know, what big surprises or shock announcements. Here's really what I think is happening with Sony behind the scenes is I think they're ramping up a big reveal for PS5. A couple things lead me to believe this. Number one, in terms of what system is more powerful, the Xbox One X is destroying the PS4. Now, owns the market right now. I believe the last time they released numbers were in somewhere about the 80 to 90 million range for consumers who own a PS4 console. Microsoft, as you guys know, doesn't put out those numbers anymore, because they were getting so badly beaten in the beginning. Now, I would honestly say if they were to actually do the release the information today, I think in the United States it's probably pretty neck and neck. People either own a PS4 or an Xbox One, or they own both in some form or fashion. But you know, Sony kind of really jumped the gun a year early with the PS4 Pro, which has left that system to sometimes be able to do 4K, but other times it's a very sub 4K system. And if you're looking for a system that is fully 4K, you know, the PlayStation 4 kind of does it sometimes. The Xbox One X gets there a lot more frequently. The most recent example I can give of a game that's really done like a night and day difference between consoles is Red Dead Redemption 2. Red Dead Redemption 2, to be fair, doesn't look terrible on the PlayStation 4 Pro. It looks okay, but when you sit down and you compare it to a screen next to you that's an Xbox One X, it kind of looks like garbage in comparison. And yeah, I know maybe that's going to sound like a fanboy comment here, but it's true. Go watch the Digital Foundry video of the comparisons of those two games. I mean, we're getting to a point where the power gap is significant enough that I think Sony is really kind of alarmed by this, and I think that's why also they're not talking about a lot of these games that have kind of been announced. You know, Ghosts of Tsushima, which I know I butchered, Last of Us Part 2, Death Stranding, all those games, well, I still think will come out on the PS4 system. I think they're also going to be launch PS5 titles. I think what you're going to get in 2019 is you're going to get one big PlayStation Experience conference. I think that's why we didn't get a PlayStation conference, and we're not getting one this December, because Sony's kind of going underground. They're not talking about what's coming out. In fact, the only really big announced game that they have is Days Gone, and if I'm being honest, I don't know anyone who gives a shit about Days Gone. It looks just bad, if we're being honest. And you know, people are excited about Last of Us Part 2, but when the hell is that game coming out? When is Death Stranding coming out? You know, Sucker Punch is working on that Ghost of Tsushima game, so these games, I think, will come out on the PS4. but I think they're going to be PS5 launch title or launch window games as well. I think it's going to be a situation where they're released on both platforms. I also think the PlayStation 5 has to be fully backwards compatible with PS4 games. There's just no way around it. You have almost 90 million people that own a PlayStation 4 system, and that's a lot. Not only is that an insane amount of systems out there within a 5-year radius, you have to count the countless video games that are out there as well. So if you put out a PS5 and it doesn't play PS4 games, you're automatically going to piss so many of those users off because you're telling them, hey, go out and buy our new box. Oh, it doesn't play those previous games you had. Kind of like when this generation started and a lot of people were pissed off about no backwards compatibility. Right now, this is my prediction for PS5 and Sony and what's going on right now. I think you get one big PlayStation experience sometime in 2019. If Sony really wants to own the story, they have it within 2 weeks, either before or after E3. Because I think part of this is they want to own the story. You know, Microsoft a couple years ago changed from going on Monday morning of E3 to have their press conference to Sunday because they wanted a full 24 hours of their story and their information getting out there before Sony's conference went, and it kind of all got pushed down because, hey, here's the next thing. And I think now Sony wants to do the same thing, but they're big enough now that they can go off and they can have their own conference and PlayStation experience and everything, and that's fine. And I think that's what you're going to see. I think you're going to see a huge PlayStation event. I think this is where they're going to announce some hard-hitting dates for some of these games. Last of Us Part 2, you know, Death Stranding. And I also think you're going to get the first reveal of the PS5. Now, this is where it gets tricky. Does the PlayStation 5 system come out fall 2019? Or does it release later than that? That's a really good question. I don't want to make a prediction here because I really just don't know. I will tell you, on Microsoft's side of things, I don't see them putting out another Xbox until fall 2020. I really don't. With that being said, there are rumors swirling right now that they're going to put out a discless Xbox One system in 2019 because of their, you know, insane push with Game Pass and digital, and that actually makes a lot of sense for them as a company to do. I don't think the PS5 or the Xbox 2 or whatever we call that will be discless systems, but I do think discless versions of them will exist. Now, so if Microsoft's not putting out a new Xbox until 2020, what does Sony do? Honestly, I can see them going one of two ways. I can see them announcing in like June, July, a big PlayStation Experience event that showcases the PS5 and announces it for a fall 2019 release, or I can also see them holding off another year and relying on third-party support. I mean, Sony's done that so often in the fall. Just rely on their, you know, third-party support for releases and kind of put out games earlier in the year. We've seen them do that time and time again this generation. I could totally see that happening again, but it's really up in the air right now what Sony's going to do, but pulling out of E3 for the first time ever really opens the door for some exciting possibilities as to what they're going to do as a company and what their strategy is for the PlayStation 5. I think we'll hear more about it early next year, what their plans are, but I think right now they're just going to kind of stay quiet about everything. They're going to put out their PlayStation Classic system, and they're going to just kind of keep things wrapped until the new year, and I think you're going to see a heavy push towards what their plans are in the beginning of 2019, and it's going to be really fascinating and interesting. It's, you know, in all my years of being a video game fan, now doing this channel and doing this stuff, I never thought I'd ever see a company pull out of the Electronics Entertainment Expo, and albeit Sony of all companies. I always thought maybe it'd be Nintendo. Sony doing it is just absolutely crazy as shit, and it really blows my mind that they're doing this. I'm really fascinated to see what the plan is going ahead here. 2019 is going to be a really interesting year for video games, you know, with Sony not having dates for some of these last couple PS4 titles, and Microsoft not really talking about anything past Crackdown 3 at this time. It does really seem like we're kind of slowing this generation down and behind the scenes prepping for the next generation. And I know a lot of people you know, are confused about, like, well, it's only been 5 years, you have to remember, up until the Xbox 360 and PS3 generation, console generations were about 5 years in length. And after every 5 years, you'd get a new system. It started with the Nintendo, went through Super Nintendo, it went through 64, PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 2, to PlayStation 3, Xbox, and Xbox 360. When we got to the Xbox 360 and PS3 generation, the reason that generation lasted longer is because of kind of all the financial crisis and stuff going on. And also, I do really think like those systems were so well developed, especially the Xbox 360. They really harness the power of those systems, and it's amazing when you sit down and you look at, here's a game that came out on the Xbox 360 when it launched versus the end, how much that system was pushed to its limits. And while I would love to see that happen for the Xbox One and the PS4, I do also think both companies, especially Microsoft, just want to put a bullet in this generation and start over with another generation, and I think it's coming here. So anyways, guys, those are my thoughts and opinions on PlayStation pulling out of E3 2019. I'd love to know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and as always, until next time.